I'm going, why aren't you upset? Why are you sitting here and you're very calm and you're very happy? Why is this not affecting you? Nothing happened. Still happy. I suddenly realised I'm not my thinking.
Today's masterclass is on inner strength, inner well-being. Our guest today is my dear friend and my amazing mentor, Gillian Fox, a certified clarity coach, the 3 principal trainer and facilitator. She is also the author of the book Promise Me, a personal journey which details the period of her life with her husband, Geoff, when they took the decision to sell up and sail around the world, little knowing that living the dream can be cruelly cut short as events unfold. Gillian's message of don't give up and the inner courage and strength she discovered during that time took her on her new journey of personal exploration, a journey that continues to this day. Welcome, Gillian.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you for having me back.
It's a pleasure. What took you on your journey to get you started on inner strength and inner well-being?
Well, I think it would be helpful if I did a little bit of a wind back to the podcast we recorded before, because what I'm going to talk about carries on from that, and the story that I tell in that first podcast about my husband and I sailing around the world is relevant to what woke me up, I guess is a very good way of putting it. So indulge me, listeners and Anita, while I do a little bit of a retake and explain that my husband and I, Geoff, and I were sailing around the world, and we happened to sail up a river called the Guadiana, which divides Spain and Portugal. And we fell in love with the place there and decided to buy some land with a ruin on it and build a house. And fast forward to 9 months and lots of interesting things along the way later. And sadly, Geoff was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and very shortly afterwards, after we quickly returned to the UK for a second opinion, he sadly died in the October of that year. And I was left with a half-finished house to complete, and my book is about the promise that I'd made to Geoff to finish that house, which I did. But our journey to that river involved a lot of stopovers because boats tend to go wrong, and ours tended to go wrong quite a lot. And so we ended up going into a lot of harbours and marinas and staying over in these places to get things done, and also to do a bit of R&R, especially when the weather was bad, because we were very much fair weather sailors and we would stay in port rather than go into a storm that we knew was already happening. It's nothing you can do if you're out there, and it does happen, but we prefer to take the easy route. So that's kind of the background I wanted to retouch on. And also that to say, I know in the first podcast towards the end, I'm talking about inner strength. And I possibly said some things that people might be puzzled about or want to know more about. So I thought this was a great opportunity to expand on that and talk more about what I do. I'm a 3 principles facilitator and coach, and a clarity coach. I'm certified in both those things. And it's an understanding that helped me immensely when I discovered it, and continues to this day. It has totally changed my world. And so what I wanted to share with people as an introduction to this was my journey as to how I found 3 principles.
Yeah.
So after I came back to the UK, I had a mentoring group that I was a part of. I started a business as doing copywriting, and I was invited to write some freelance emails for a gentleman called Jamie Jamie at the time was an NLP coach and had a big business and was very well known and respected in the NLP world. But he was just turning towards something that he'd discovered through Michael Neill, I believe, and it was called the Three Principles. And so, because I was working for him, I was seeing a lot of the literature he was publishing, also writing his emails, and it became very interesting to me. I thought I would like to explore this, something, I call it a little golden thread that pulled me forward.
Oh, I like that.
Said, let's just see what's going on here. So I joined his mastermind group. He started up his Clarity Practitioners group, and I was extremely lucky to be on the first intake, where he had all the, what I call first generation Three Principles teachers who had been around Sydney Banks, who uncovered this understanding and had a huge enlightenment experience and realized that it was something that could help so many people and change the world, in fact.
Definitely.
And so all these wonderful people came over from the States and talked to us. So I followed that through with another round of training with Jamie, became a mentor on his Clarity Practitioner program. As part of that whole experience with training, he had retreats that he used to run. And one I went on in Sitges in Spain was a very lovely place to be, a very beautiful, beautiful place. It was by the seaside and we were in a lovely hotel, a small group of us. First evening, we all gathered together. We walked down to the place where all the little restaurants were, and if anybody knows the way of things in Spain and Portugal, you know, you have the restaurant there, and then there's usually a little bit of road or whatever, and then there's often tables in the middle, and you sit there and enjoy the evening sun. And we were in this lovely conversation, just getting to know each other and see who was on our group for the few days. Just sitting there, enjoying the evening sun, nice food, having a drink. I just had this lovely feeling of what a wonderful experience I'm having. And I looked to my right and I realised I was beside a marina full of boats. Now, up until that moment, any time I had been in that situation since Geoff had died, I would get upset. I would go and remember the happy times, the many places we'd been in that situation where we'd been sitting on a boat in a marina. So I was puzzled because I didn't feel upset. I didn't feel the need to be upset. So what did I do? You know, like when you've got toothache and your tongue keeps going back to prod at that tooth and worry it, you know, and say, oh, has it got worse? And I did that up in my head. I'm going, well, why aren't you upset? Why are you sitting here and you're very calm and you're very happy? Why is this not affecting you? Nothing happened. Still happy. I suddenly realised I'm not my thinking. I do not need to even unconsciously reference the past every time I'm in this situation. It has no power over me. Unless I choose to indulge in that. But I can't manufacture those feelings. I don't need to.
That's powerful.
It was huge. It was like my whole being did a 180 degree and went from what is outside has the power over me to upset me to it has no power, it's neutral. Nobody else in this group is feeling upset because they haven't had that, perhaps had that experience that I've had. Therefore, if that works in this case, it can work in every case.
Insightful.
Huge. Absolutely huge. And it went on to be an even more interesting and insightful whole few days. But that to me was, and insight is a very personal thing. You can't, I can talk about this, and you may find that there's a feeling within you that kind of recognises it, because we've all had experiences. We may not flag them up, but because I was in that conversation, it really, really hit me like a ton of bricks, basically. And that's what I'd invite you to do for the rest of this conversation, is just listen to me. Don't try and intellectualise what I say, because that ain't going to work. The mind is it's a very useful tool, but it's not a good master. We have far more about us than just our intellect. So it's the feeling that counts.
That's absolutely amazing. And then we do question, like you say, with the mind. Oh, why isn't this happening? That usually happens. Oh, what's changed? What's happening now? It's allowing things to settle, just be. And we often don't do that. We're always trying to intellectually put meaning on things, trying to change things. Okay, why is this? Sometimes, just let it go. Just let it go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what wisdom, insightful is that? That's excellent.
Yeah. And we all have, I refer to it, the Gillian strength that I found when Geoff died to carry on. That well is bottomless. And that's, I access that through the fact that I've made a promise and I keep my promises. And it still amazes me to this day what I did. And yes, I had help, and I talk about that on the first podcast. But that was kind of like the door opening a little bit. And then when I found this 3 principles understanding and realised that's what it was, And it's everybody has it. Yeah. Whether we realise it or not, it's actually already there. There's no searching to be done.
Yes.
No technique to be needed. It's just a realisation. It's a knowing with a capital K.
I like that.
And it's that feeling that I had in situ. That was knowing. That didn't come through the filters of my personal thinking. That was universal mind, thought and consciousness just flowing through me without my limiting human filters on. And that's what I felt in that moment. And you can't unknow. Once it's happened, it's there. It's, if you like, it's like a comfort blanket. And however much I may forget and be human, I know inside that it's always there. It's like, to use the whirlwill metaphor that is so lovely, that it's like the clouds of my thinking come in, but beneath and behind those clouds, that sun, that inner strength, that inner wisdom is always there. And I don't actually have to give my thoughts any attention. I don't have to believe them. Some of them are jolly interesting and I get really caught up in them. But I am not. We're our experience of this world is as a reaction machine. Things happen outside. We personalise them and we react in our own unique way because that's what we've been gifted. This human experience is unique for each one of us. And so we react to different things. What might upset you doesn't upset me. What might make you laugh doesn't make me laugh. And we are puzzled when you're upset and I'm not, or I'm upset and you're not. We wonder why. Well, why aren't you affected by that? Yeah, because it's innate to us. But when we look at life from the inside out, as Michael Neal calls it, and I think it's a lovely way of putting it, a very simplistic and very beautiful way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
When we know and we see life from the inside out, we stop being reaction machines.
Yeah.
It's a much more peaceful existence. Jamie has a beautiful, beautiful way of expressing this understanding and what it could do for the world. And he likens it to everybody. Everybody's in the Millennium Dome, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got the candle of knowing, of understanding how the life works. And the person next door feels something and they light their candle. And then the person next door lights. And one day, everybody in that dome understands.
Wow.
Think what that would do.
Absolutely.
You know, especially in these times,
Mm-hmm.
these unsettled times, these unsure times. What would that do
Definitely.
for the world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is, when I saw how big this could be, how big this is, some people say it's oversimple. Yes, it is. It is so simple. And why make things complicated, you know?
Absolutely.
All we need is just one insight.
And we always overcomplicate everything. Why?
Because we're human and we like to do that.
And
there's so much going on up here.
it's quieting that noise, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Definitely.
When that noise quietens down, people, if you've meditated,
Mm-hmm.
you're going into that state. You're accessing infinity, universal consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it. They're all lovely labels, aren't they? They're all pointing to the same thing.
Yeah.
We come at this from different sides of the mountain and we climb up our own way.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all going for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is beyond words.
Mm.
And that's why I say look for the feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
Just relax. I remember sitting in a training with Dr. Mark Howard. He was talking, as I am, just talking about something, I couldn't even tell you what.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an out-of-body experience.
Wow.
I kind of floated about, and it was so beautiful that I just sat there, with streaming down my face. Now, nobody takes any notice when this happens in Three Principles training because we know that person has just seen something huge. And I had the lovely Ian Watson sitting next to me, and he just looked at me and went, "What happened there then?" I said, "I've got no idea, but it was so amusingly beautiful." And that's, that moment when you touch universal energy. Yeah. And then you come back down to earth and you go and have a curry with your mates, which is exactly what we did.
Oh, bless. That's so beautiful. And like you say, once you know, you can't unknow it.
No.
And that's, I think that's huge. Because when I got certain things, I'm thinking, once you know it, you can't unknow it. And you can't go back to being the person you were.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, we have worked together for a good few years now, actually.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you about this and left it with you. And I've seen you change and grow and overcome circumstances that have occurred for you with grace, with understanding, with a deeper knowledge of not getting reactive about things that have happened.
Yeah.
And that's not me doing that. That's words that come through my mouth and hit you in the nicest possible sense.
Yeah.
You do the work. I sit and I talk and something lands and the world changes.
Absolutely. And I am so grateful to have you in my life. So yes, definitely. It's been an absolute and always is a pleasure talking to you, Jill. I have learned so much and thank you. What resources do you recommend and daily tools for anybody that would like to access a better understanding, and is at a point of giving up, they're struggling?
There are many books out there. There are many teachers out there. If somebody is interested in what I've said, they can email me. My email is gillian@gillianfox.com. I heartily recommend Michael Neill's book, Inside Out Understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simplistic, sounds rude, but it's not. It's beautifully written, very simple. There is also, if somebody's more interested in the practical side of this understanding, Dr. Jack Pransky wrote a book called Modello, Modello, and it's actually what happened when Roger Mills, who was one of the first proponents to use this in a social setting, he went into a troubled area in the United States and he set up an office there, and he just talked to the people that were the neighbours of that office. And he used to set up meetings and he'd just talk. And that enclave went from a drug-riddled, crime-riddled, police couldn't even go near it area to a place where the residents started to realise they had choices. They had choices not to react. They had choices not to take drugs. They had choices not to stand for any more abuse. And gradually, this understanding filtered through and that area changed. And to me, that was a practical example of this understanding in the real world and what it could do and the power of what it could do within a community that woke up.
Wow.
And realised they had a choice. So I love that book. I love that book. The Missing Link, I've got it here. I reference this a lot, is by Sydney Banks, the gentleman that had the Enlightenment experience and talks, was the original teacher of this. He's written many books that are available on Amazon. Jamie Smart, if you're more of a business person, he takes the clarity, understanding into businesses and has huge effect on that. Ian Watson is a lovely person to go and seek out. That I could go on forever. There are so many people. If anybody wants to email me, just head up the email podcast question.
So
I can point you, and if anybody is interested in talking to me, I do a little bit of mentoring still. I'm semi-retired, but I do occasionally pop my head above the parapet and work with people like yourself, Anita.
Absolutely. I'd highly recommend you, of course.
Thank you.
And so where can the listeners get your book and find you online? What's your website?
I do not have a website anymore. I have a website holding page, I think it's called, which is www.gillianfox.com, and that has my email address on it, which, as I've said, is gillian@gillianfox.com. The book what I wrote, to paraphrase Malcolm and Wise, is called Promise Me, A Personal Journey. That is available on Amazon, and it is available on the Kindle version is available. And that's still up on Amazon.
Excellent. So thank you for sharing your deep, insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today, Gillian Fox.
Thank you, Anita.
So I have a couple of last questions. I know I've asked you these in our interview, but I'd like to ask you them again. What is one of the most courageous things you have done?
I gave one answer last time, so I think I'll pick another answer. The day that I stood in front of 200 people on stage as part of our mastermind end of term, you might call it, conference that we had, I was invited to be one of 4 people in a it was called Better Your Best competition. And my mentors at the time, Daniel and James, had picked me as one of the 4 people that had done well through their tutoring with my little business that I had. So 4 of us got up on stage and talked about our journey and our business. I shared my story, and my story touched people who came over to me afterwards and said, what you said really helped me. So that is why I wrote the book. But for me, as a quiet person who doesn't particularly like being in the spotlight, to stand on stage in front of 200 people, I thought was going to be terrifying. However, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I pretended I was a mixture of Madonna and David Tennant, which is very strange. But to me, Madonna personifies stardom and David Tennant is a superb actor. And I just kind of channeled them, went on stage with this cloak of confidence on, told my story, didn't die, came off stage and that wasn't too bad.
Excellent.
Public speaking is sometimes on the list more feared than death, which is extraordinary. So for me, that was a pretty courageous thing to do at the time.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So what is your definition of courage?
My definition of courage is the same. My definition of courage is the faith, the knowing that we have inner strength, and the knowing that when I say we cannot be harmed, we have nothing to fear, I'm not talking about the human physical body. I'm talking about the soul essence, if you like, of us. And that can never be changed. That never dies. That is infinite. We are one. We're all part of universal consciousness. So that is my definition.